we move to the next news video, and we start off with highly anticipated news, in my opinion, as the Iron Claw movie, the movie based on the Von Erich dynasty, is set to finally be released on December 22nd, which is fantastic news. If you don't know who's starring in it, I do believe the stars of the movie consist of Kevin Von Erich. The stars of the movie consist of Zac Efron and I believe Jeremy Allen White. And the concept of the movie is following the life and times of Kevin Von Erich, starting with the relationship with his brothers and going all the way to Ross and Ross and why can't I remember his brother? The Von Erich dynasty of today, as Kevin Von Erich's sons are still in professional wrestling, and what the legacy of the Von Erich dynasty is after all these years of being in professional wrestling, and what unfortunately transpired between, with Kevin's brothers, David, Kerry, Mike, and Chris, and the legacy that their father leaves behind. That being Fritz. With that being said, I'm excited to see the movie. I genuinely would actually consider going to the theaters to watch the movie, which says a lot, because I honestly never go to the theater to watch the movie because, well, it's expensive to go to the theaters, and I'm not going to waste my money going to the theater. You know, simple as that. But I would actually want to see this movie, and I would actually go to the theater to watch it. And not just because actually, yes, just because it's a wrestling movie. But that's beside the point. But now we move to another wrestling movie, and that is CM Punk's AEW tenure has been that of Hollywood movies. Up and down, twists and turns, everything you could expect and more. And last time we saw him on Collision, it was even more of a movie because Punk took out the AEW World title that he never lost and declared himself the official, the real world's champion. And it set up a match between himself and Ricky Starks on this week's episode of AEW Collision, with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat as the special referee. Honestly, there's a reason why Collision has actually gotten more of my attention since Collision debuted, and it's not necessarily because of CM Punk. It is because I feel like the overall nature of the show, it's just more my style on Collision than it is on Dynamite. Like, they've really upped the bar or raised the bar on what to expect on Collision, and the bar that you expect on Dynamite is still low. I mean, that just might be my opinion, but from what I've seen, Collision has been better than Dynamite. And if Punk is going to just appear on Collision, and not on Dynamite, I'm just going to sit here and say that CM Punk and his story, whatever this real world champion, wherever this real world champion gimmick is going to go, whether it's going to go to a feud with MJF and they're going to do the match that they wanted to do last year, or what it is, the fact of the matter is, it is still a very interesting story that will get people's attention. Honestly, it is a very interesting story that will get people's attention. And very worthwhile. And also, I just want to point out the inclusion of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I love the idea of including Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and working with legends just like Ricky Steamboat. So, props to AEW for pulling that out of the woodwork and bringing Ricky Steamboat in for a special appearance. Speaking of AEW, Chris Hero was actually brought in as on a full-time basis as a road agent or a producer, or I believe AEW calls them coaches. Chris Hero had been working for the company part time on a trial basis, but was recently signed to a full time contract. So props to Chris Hero for coming. I guess props to Chris Hero for getting a full time job. And speaking of getting a full time job, Scott Taylor was actually recently given a producer tryout with AEW, as Scott had been with WWE for the last, God, probably 8 years. Was it 6 years? Somewhere in that range. Somewhere in that range. He was with WWE from 2016 till this past year, and has actually been making a host of trips to Europe over the past year. So the fact that he's actually getting the opportunity to get I don't want to say a full time job, but another opportunity, number one, shows how good of a coach he is, and number two, it shows what he brings to the table, I guess is the best way to put it. You know what I mean? It shows what he brings to the table as a coach, that he's getting another opportunity this soon after being, I don't want to say released, because it was his idea to get released or leave WWE. So, but he's getting another opportunity, is what I'm saying. So props to him, and a good move by AEW, getting somebody who is a valued coach in the world of professional wrestling. Also, I just want to say, back to the all-in spiel that I talked about earlier, the fact that Nigel McGuinness has the opportunity to be featured on a show and an event the scale of All In. I'm not saying that that's like the big deal, but the big deal is the fact that Nigel will be featured as the hometown hero, or will have the opportunity to be featured as the hometown hero on a show in the UK. So hopefully that is something that actually happens, and that's not something we're just, coughing up, because Nigel deserves to be featured on the show as well. I'm not saying in ring, I'm just saying in some way, shape, or form, Nigel McGuinness should be featured at All In the UK. Again, I just want to mention that WWE SummerSlam is set to take place this weekend, with Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes alongside Jey Uso and Roman Reigns as the featured matchups. Seth Rollins and Finn Balor for the World Heavyweight Championship, with, of course, fellow Judgment Day member Damian Priest holding Money in the Bank. And the question being, what will it take for Damian Priest? What will it take for Damian Priest to cash in Money in the Bank at SummerSlam? If Finn Balor wins, would Damian Priest cash in Money in the Bank? Or is it only if Seth Rollins wins that Damian Priest will cash in Money in the Bank? You know what I mean? Also, of course, a triple threat match for the SmackDown Women's Championship, as Asuka collides with Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair. Honestly, I think anybody else but Asuka winning is a disappointment. But, I mean, what are you going to do? But also, we got plenty of questions going into SummerSlam. Will there be other matches added? I'm sure there may be one or two. But the most intriguing match to me, outside of Gunther versus Drew McIntyre for the Intercontinental title, is, of course, the SummerSlam Battle Royal. And that is only because I love Battle Royals. But also, before we go, I just want to mention a hope of getting back to 100% for Vince McMahon, as Vince McMahon had recently had major spinal surgery, a 4-hour surgery, and there's no timetable for his recovery. Does this mean that Vince is not going to be at the shows every week? I mean, if anybody would, it's Vince McMahon. If they're having major surgery, he wouldn't take time off of work. But I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. And there's no update on if Vince is at the shows after the surgery, or when he'll return to the shows, or how things are going, if he's taking his recovery time seriously. Like, there's no updates on that. It was just the fact that Vince had made a major spinal surgery recently. So I wish nothing but the best in the recovery time to Vince. And honestly, I kind of do hope he takes the proper recovery time and stays away, just heals up, gets back to 100%, and then if he wants to come back, comes back. That's it. Just, you know, there's no need for you to travel. There's no need for you to be sticking your nose in that business right now. Focus on recovery and just ignore everything else for the time being. Even if it's just for a couple weeks, just focus on your recovery. As recovery, when you have major surgery, recovery is the most important thing. But either way, that's just me. With that being said, though, that is it for the news. Do not forget that WWE SummerSlam is this weekend, this Saturday, alongside AEW Collision, Starks versus Punk, with Ricky Steamboat as the special referee, and also on August 27th, live on pay-per-view and Bleacher Report TV. It is AEW's biggest pay-per-view of the year and biggest event in the history of the company. All in. With that being said, that is it for me, and I will see you in the next one.